Emily Turner, froze when my phone buzzed with a bank notification. The cold light revealed a glaring balance for $5,000. 0 cents. Less than 24 hours earlier, my account held over $10,000. 0 cents. Now more than $15,000. 0 cents. Had evaporated overnight. I sank to the edge of the bed, stunned by those sinister red digits. How could this be happening? I tapped refresh, but only heard an error tone. Convinced it was a system glitch, I forced myself up and stumbled onto my tiny balcony. Dawn air bit at my cheeks, but it did nothing to calm the storm inside. I gripped the railing as trembling fingers sought steady breaths. 1,000 panicked thoughts raced. Had I clicked a malicious link? Was this a bank error? Then a darker suspicion settled. Was this a meticulously orchestrated betrayal? I lifted my gaze to the pale morning sky and murmured, "This moment has shattered more than my bank balance." In that instant, I sensed discovering what came next would redefine my life. The journey to confront betrayal was beginning. I remember the day I first decided to become my own boss. It was early summer 2016, and I'd just closed a deal that paid me $7,500, 0 cents in consulting fees, more than I'd ever made in a single month as an analyst at my old firm. I was Emily Turner, a freshly minted certified financial planner with a passion for helping people take control of their money. I'd spent years studying spreadsheets and balance sheets, but nothing compared to the thrill of sitting across from a client who finally understood the power of a solid budgeting plan. By 2018, I felt ready to take the leap. I pooled every dollar I had, $30,000, 0 cents from savings. A $20,000, 0 cents low-interest loan co-signed by my father, Thomas Turner, and launched Turner Advisory with exactly $50,000, 0 cents, in the bank. My tiny office on Main Street was furnished with a hand-me-down desk, a second-hand leather chair, and a whiteboard covered in copier glue and projection. I subscribed to top-tier financial software at $150, 0 cents per month, for CRM and portfolio analytics, and rented my space for $1,200, 0 cents a month. Most evenings, you'd find me here until 9 p.m., sipping a venti dark roast from Starbucks headphones, in recalibrating my marketing funnel, or drafting an email sequence to re-engage past prospects. From day one, I set a goal. By the end of my first full year, I would average $8,000, 0 cents in revenue per month. I tracked metrics obsessively. At each quarter, I'd review my pipeline, how many inquiries turned into consults, how many consults into signed clients, and how many clients upgraded to a retainer. I ran projections in Excel and Power BI, adjusting for seasonality and client churn. By Q4 2018, I was not only hitting $8,000, 0 cents monthly, was exceeding it, averaging $9,200, 0 cents in revenue and netting about $6,500, 0 cents after expenses. In 2019, I brought on 2 strategic partners. Madison Lee, my college roommate turned PR mastermind, agreed to handle all client communications and social media for a flat monthly fee of $3,000. 0 cents. And Sarah Brooks, an up-and-coming investment strategist, signed on as a 20% equity partner. Her entry fee $40,000, 0 cents in cash and in-kind services. Sarah's investment track record was impressive. She'd managed a small family office fund that returned 12% annually over 5 years. Together, the 3 of us formed a tight-knit team. We celebrated every new client birthdays, anniversaries, new sign-offs. No detail was too small. The company's growth metrics from 2019 to 21 read like a dream. 2019, $220,000, 0 cents in revenue. 35% yo-yo growth. 2022, $197,000, 0 cents in revenue. 35% yo-yo growth. 2021, $401,000, 0 cents in revenue. We reinvested profits into the business. In 2020, we upgraded our office to a duplex in the heart of downtown, doubling our rent to $2,400, 0 cents month, but tripling our foot traffic. We launched an educational webinar series titled Money Mastery with Emily, attracting an average of 150 attendees per session. Madison negotiated a feature in a leading personal finance podcast, costing $2,500, 0 cents in PR fees, but driving 25 new leads. Sarah managed to secure a pilot partnership with a robo-advisor platform, bringing in an additional $18,000, 0 cents in consulting revenue. On the personal side, I built credibility and trust by sharing my own journey, my student loan payoff story, my early mistakes with a margin loan gone wrong, and how I learned to bounce back from a credit card balance that ballooned to $14,000, 0 cents, after a family emergency. I wrote weekly blogs, Emily's Friday Finance Fix, offering actionable tips. My email list grew from 500 to 5,000 subscribers in under 18 months. Each new testimonial felt like a victory lap. I increased my savings rate from 5% to 20%. I paid off $12,000, 0 cents of debt in 6 months. I finally feel in control of my money. My family was proud. My father Thomas would broom to his friends at the country club about his daughter's killer instinct in finance. My stepmother Margaret sent me stationery emblazoned with Turner Advisors logo whenever I landed a big client. My younger brother Lucas interned with me over the summer of 2020, helping me design pitch decks for high net worth prospects. Even my grandmother Anna would ask me about my little empire whenever we video chatted on Sunday. By early 2022, my calendar was fully booked 3 months in advance. I was mentoring 2 junior advisors, planning to expand into Texas and Florida by year's end. I had a vision, a national boutique firm that offered personalized plans to millennials and Gen Z clients who craved authenticity. We had a pipeline of 200 qualified leads and were negotiating a $50,000 0 cent sponsorship with a major fintech conference. Looking back, it seemed like nothing could stop Turner Advisory. We had the numbers, the narrative, and the network. Every piece fit neatly into the puzzle. My marketing savvy, Madison's PR flair, Sarah's investment chops. We were the unstoppable trio set to redefine the industry. Yet beneath the surface of spreadsheets and slide decks, subtle cracks were forming. Small discrepancies in our monthly reconciliations, $1,500, 0 cents here, $2,000, 0 cents there, were brushed off as timing differences. Madison grew quieter in meetings, her text less enthusiastic. Sarah started requesting additional expense advances for client dinners that never materialized. I chalked it up to the stresses of rapid growth. After all, running a business felt like trying to tame a beast. Sometimes it roared, sometimes it purred, and we were on the cusp of our biggest roar yet. Little did I know, those tiny red flags were harbingers of a storm that would change everything. It all began on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in April 2024. I was wrapping up a client meeting via Zoom when my phone buzzed with a message from Madison. Hey Em. Saw something weird in the Q1 report. Can we talk? My heart skipped. Q1 had just closed, and I'd been proud to see our numbers trending upward despite volatile markets. I excused myself from the call, muted my mic, and opened the shared folder on Dropbox. There, sitting between the finalized P&L and cash flow statement, was an overwritten spreadsheet labeled April_reforecast_V3 X mark next. The file showed revenue projections that were $12,000, 0 cents, lower than what I remembered approving. My first instinct was disbelief. Had I misread my own notes? I drilled down into the formulas, tracing line-by-line client fees, commission splits, travel reimbursements. On the row for client onboarding fee, Sarah Brooks Division, a figure of $25,000. 0 cents was inexplicably broken into two entries. $8,000, 0 cents, and $17,000, 0 cents. But in my original version, that fee should have been a single $25,000, 0 cents, line items. Somewhere along the way, $12,000, 0 cents had been siphoned off and rerouted. I tapped Madison back. Send me a screenshot. She sent two on showing the formula bar with a hidden sum function that pulled $12,000, 0 cents, into a separate tab labeled SB_expenses, the other showing a list of expense reimbursements that exceeded budget by $7,500, 0 cents. The blurred line between a reimbursable dinner with prospective clients and an unauthorized fund transfer was chilling. My pulse quickened. I scrolled further down and discovered a draft invoice in our invoicing software, an invoice to a major client for $7,500, 0 cents in marketing expenses that I had never approved. Instead of being sent to Horizon Tech, it appeared to have been sent to a personal email address belonging to Sarah. My breath caught. Had she already billed my client and pocketed the funds? Before panic could fully set in, I tried to rationalize. Surely this was a system glitch. Our invoicing platform had recently pushed an update. Maybe it duplicated entries or mixed tabs. I closed the laptop, telling myself to take a walk and come back with fresh eyes. That evening, I drove to the local coffee shop, my third office, as I used to joke. The barista, Jenna, handed me a venti cold brew with an encouraging smile. I opened my laptop, loaded the Q1 report anew, and methodically recreated the sequence of entries. Every step I took replicated the discrepancy. The unauthorized $12,000, 0 cents, still existed. The phantom invoice still showed up in the Sent tab. There was no escaping it. Something or someone was manipulating our records. I texted Sarah, "Can you explain the SV_expense tab? I'm seeing odd entries." Her reply came minutes later. "Oh, that's just my personal tracking sheet. Ignore it. I was testing a new expense tracking method. Didn't mean to share it, my bad." The casual tone should have soothed me, but it didn't. Instead, it set off an alarm. Why maintain a hidden tracking sheet outside our system? Why funnel budget overruns there? I shot back. "We need to sync up tomorrow. Let's go through this line by line." Sleep was scarce that night. My mind replayed every meeting Sarah and I had, our handshake agreement for 20% equity, our celebration dinners where I toasted her investment genius. I recalled how she'd secured that $18,000, 0 cents pilot partner with her proudest achievement. Now, I wondered if she'd been padding her own pockets all along. The next morning, at 9 a.m. sharp, Madison and I met in our conference room. Rain streaked the windows as I connected my laptop to the big screen. I watched Madison's face pale as I walked her through the data, the sum function, the hidden tab, the rogue invoice. Madison's lip quivered. I thought Sarah was helping lighten your load on expense tracking," she stammered. "She said she had a shortcut to speed up month-end reconciliation." Her words floated in the air like heavy mist. I felt betrayed by both my partner and my friend. By midday, I drafted an email to Sarah, subject, urgent Q1, discrepancies. Hi Sarah. I discovered discrepancies in our Q1 financials that need immediate clarification. Let's meet at 3 p.m. today to review the entries I've highlighted. Please be prepared to discuss the $12,000 0 cents transfer and the $7,500 0 cents invoice. Thanks, Emily. I hit send, and my chest tightened. Over the next hour, I reorganized my desk, printed copies of every report, highlighted suspect entries with neon pink highlighter, lined them up in a neat stack. At 2:55 p.m., I sat stiffly in my chair, rehearsing how I'd phrase the accusation without sounding like a vengeful boss. Sarah arrived at exactly 3 p.m., her trademark silk scarf bright against the gray afternoon. She greeted me with a measured smile. "And you wanted to see me?" I stood and pointed to the first printout. "Explain this." Her breath caught. For a moment she looked like she wanted to flee. Then she leaned forward, smoothing the page. "Those entries were pre-authorized," she said, her voice low. "I thought you'd approved them in our last call." I shook my head. "No. I approved the $25,000 0 cents onboarding fee. Not two separate entries. And definitely not an extra $7,500 0 cents billed to Horizon Tech." Her eyes darted to the window. "I must have misunderstood. Look, it's a cash flow timing thing. We'd get the client to reimburse the excess next month." I pressed on. "So that extra $7,500 0 cents is going to come out of your pocket? What about the $12,000 0 cents? There's no legitimate expense tied to it." Her face drained of color. Okay. Maybe I accelerated some costs to manage deadlines. I intended to reconcile by the end of May. I closed the folder with a sharp clack. "You moved money around without my knowledge. That's not management, Sarah, that's theft." Time seemed to slow. The room smelled of damp air and cold coffee. Sarah's shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry, Emily. I realized the gravity of what had happened." The first crack in our foundation had opened wide. The partner I trusted most had crossed a line I never imagined she would, and I was left standing on the brink, wondering how deep the betrayal would ultimately run. I could feel my pulse in my temples as I waited for Sarah to arrive, every tick of the wall clock hammering the betrayal into my bones. When she finally pushed open the door, her usual confident stride was gone, replaced by a hesitant shuffle. She carried my company laptop in one hand and a manila envelope in the other, like a criminal sheepishly returning stolen goods. I stood, smoothing my blazer even though my hands trembled. "Take a seat," I said, voice tight. Sarah lowered herself into the chair opposite me, clutching the laptop like it would vanish if she let go. The manila envelope lay on the table between us, bulging slightly, its contents unknown. I tapped the stack of printed reports I'd spread before her. "Let's start at the beginning," I said, my gaze fixed on the spreadsheet with the highlighted $12,000 0 cents diversion. "Tell me why you split our $25,000 0 cents onboarding fee into two entries. $8,000 0 cents here, $17,000 0 cents there, then routed that extra $12,000 0 cents onto this hidden tab." Sarah's breath caught. She swallowed, eyes darting to the door, then back to me, as if expecting reinforcements. Finally, she leaned forward and whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." "Then why hide it?" I pressed, my voice low but fierce. "Why create an SD_expenses tab and funnel money there without anyone's approval?" Her shoulders slumped. I was trying to protect us, she said, lips quivering. After the April market dip, cash flow was tighter than I'd expected. I panicked, Emily. I saw expenses piling up. I thought if I shifted funds temporarily, I could patch the gap and reconcile everything before anyone noticed. I felt a cold surge of anger. Your plan was to play God with our clients' money. You turned my trust into your personal piggy bank. I reached out and flipped to the draft invoice printed beneath the spreadsheet. How do you justify this $7,500.00 marketing expense billed to Horizon Tech and sent to your personal email? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She dropped her head, twisting a strand of hair around her finger. I thought I could invoice it back to them next month, once the webinar revenue came in. I planned to explain it as a sponsorship fee. I was desperate. Desperation. The word echoed in the quiet room. I remembered all the times we toasted Sarah's investment genius, the $18,000 pilot partner with the robo-advisor platform, the gala dinners where she'd charm potential clients. I'd believed her brilliance. Now I saw it for what it was, a veneer covering calculated deceit. I trusted you, I said, voice trembling. You were more than a partner. You were family. My eyes stung. My father, my team, my clients, they all believed in us because I believed in you. Sarah raised her head, her face a portrait of remorse. I know, and I'm so sorry. I thought as long as I covered the tracks, no one would notice. I planned to make it right before the annual audit, but you did it. You lied. You abused the only thing more precious than money. Trust. Her bottom lip quivered. I'm sorry, she repeated, voice barely audible. I never wanted to lose you, us. I inhaled, tasting the cold metal of my resolve. It's over, Sarah. Effective immediately, you're stripped of all access to Turner Advisory accounts. By 5 p.m., I expect your company laptop, keys, and ID badge returned in that envelope. Everything else stays behind. Sarah nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. She stood, crossed the room, and placed the envelope before me. The weight of it was tangible. My laptop, company contracts, even her own equity certificate. Thank you, she whispered, as if grateful for my mercy. I watched her go, her shoulders tight with shame, until she stepped through the door, and it clicked shut. Silence sprawled across the room, heavy as a suffocating blanket. I exhaled, a bitter release that left my lungs hollow. I gathered the reports and slid them into a drawer, then sat at my desk and let the magnitude of the breach wash over me. That evening, I pored over every client file, tracing every dollar Sarah had touched. Late into the night, I worked correcting invoices, drafting apology emails, calculating interest refunds. By the time I finally left the office, I'd processed adjustments totaling $48,000, 0 cents. My bank account had taken a hit, but my integrity remained intact. The next morning, I met Lauren Carter, my attorney, at her law office. She sifted through the evidence, hidden spreadsheets, draft invoices, email correspondences, and nodded grimly. You have a solid case for embezzlement and breach of fiduciary duty, she said. We'll file for a restraining order and seek full restitution plus damages for reputational harm. I felt a strange comfort in her certainty. Finally, someone believed the gravity of this betrayal matched the loss I'd endured. Do it, I said, and let's move quickly. I need to close this chapter so Turner Advisory can start rebuilding. Back in the office, I called a meeting with Madison. She arrived clutching 2 cups of coffee, black, like my mood. We sat at the conference room table, steam curling in the early morning light. Clients are calling, Madison said, her voice soft. They're worried, confused, some are furious. I nodded. I've drafted a broadcast email. We'll be transparent, tell them exactly what happened, how we're fixing it, and what safeguards we're putting in place. I handed her the draft. Dear valued clients, I regret to inform you that a former partner violated your trust by misappropriating funds totaling over $20,000, 0 cents. We have terminated her access, processed full refunds including interest, and engaged an external CPA for a comprehensive audit. Additionally, we're implementing multi-level approvals on all transactions to ensure this never happens again. I apologize and commit to earning your trust back every day. Madison read it, eyes misting. It's honest, she said. It'll hurt, but they need to know. It's necessary, I replied. We can't rebuild on anything less. Over the next week, Turner Advisory felt like a war zone. Our external CPA unearthed minor discrepancies stretching back nearly a year, evidence that Sarah's manipulations had been creeping in long before I noticed. Each discovery stung, but it also illuminated weak spots in our systems. I reorganized our entire financial process, real-time dashboards, two-person sign-offs on any expense over $500, 0 cents, automated alerts for unusual transactions. I hired a junior advisor to handle day-to-day reconciliations, freeing Madison to manage client relations and PR. We rebranded our client portal with a trust and transparency banner baked into every page. And yet, amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. Clients began returning. Some sent emails of support. One even upgraded her retainer. I realized that by confronting the betrayal head-on, owning it, fixing it, and promising real change, we had strengthened rather than shattered our reputation. 2 weeks later, I sat on my balcony again, the early summer breeze brushing my face. The skyline of downtown glimmered in the twilight. Turner Advisory was far from healed, but it was moving forward more cautiously, more vigilantly, but forward nonetheless. I raised a glass of Pinot Noir and whispered into the night. You tested me, Sarah. You thought you could break me. Instead, you taught me how to build something unbreakable. And with that, I let the city's lights and my own resolve guide me into the next chapter, one defined not by betrayal, but by resilience. I could feel the exhaustion tearing through me, like a relentless tide pulling me deeper into despair. Sleep had become a stranger. 5 nights in a row I lay awake, mind whirring with images of red ink cells and phantom invoices. My eyelids grew heavy, but the moment I closed them, I was catapulted into dreams of angry clients demanding refunds, their faces twisted in accusation. I would bolt upright at 3:17 a.m. precise, to the minute, my heart pounding as if trying to escape my chest. Each morning I dragged myself into the office before dawn, trading my usual venti cold brew for black tea in a hope it might steady my nerves. Appointment slots, once filled 3 months in advance, sat eerily empty, as if the chairs themselves had fled. My calendar showed cancellations totaling $3,000, 0 cents in lost deposits. High net worth clients, whose trust I'd shattered without even picking up a pen. I replayed every conversation I'd had since Sarah's betrayal, dissecting my own mistakes. Why hadn't I caught the hidden SB_expenses tab sooner? Why had I shrugged off the $2,300, 0 cents, overrun in Madison's marketing budget as seasonal variance? By the 3rd day, I could no longer stand the sterile glow of the fluorescent lights in the conference room. I told Madison I needed fresh air and fled to the rooftop terrace, an oasis I'd rarely used. The city stretched out below, early joggers circled the fountain, streetlights winked off as dawn approached, and delivery trucks rumbled past. I pressed my palms against the cool railing, closed my eyes, and let out a shaky breath. A text vibrated in my pocket. Lauren Carter Court. Date confirmed for Monday. Are you okay? I stared at the message. My attorney's calm professionalism only reminded me how far I'd fallen from the confident founder I once was. I typed back a simple, "I'll be there," then locked my phone away. The afternoon passed in a blur. I sat at my desk, head in my hands, as Madison quietly reorganized files around me. Occasionally she'd offer a sympathetic look, which I'd acknowledge with a tight nod. I was embarrassed by how broken I felt, an advisor who preached resilience, yet crumpled under pressure. That evening, I couldn't bring myself to go home. Instead, I camped out in my car for 2 hours, parked by the riverbank. I watched the water swirl around the pillars of the bridge, reflecting the neon signs of downtown. In that stillness, I confronted a question I'd been avoiding. Was this the end of my dream? The thought landed like a punch, and tears escaped despite my best efforts to hold them back. On the drive back, I stopped at a 24-hour diner and ordered coffee and fries, comfort food I hadn't touched in years. I sat in the corner booth, replaying every detail of the betrayal. I felt hollow, as though someone had extracted my purpose. By the time I finished my meal, I realized I hadn't eaten or slept or breathed properly for days. My tank was empty. The next morning, I awoke before my alarm, drawn by a cruel mix of dread and obligation. My vision blurred as I showered, my reflection splitting into a stranger's. I managed to stuff my damp hair into a sleek ponytail and pull on my blazer, but the act felt mechanical. At the office, Madison found me at the reception desk, staring at the blank checkbook I'd ordered for client refunds. "Emma," she said softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You need a break. Even just a few hours." I shook my head, voice hoarse. "I can't. Not until I fix every last error." She sighed, and I could see the conflict in her eyes between wanting to push me forward and wanting to pull me back from the edge. "Promise me you'll step outside for 10 minutes. Breathe for me." I closed my eyes, then nodded. I walked into the courtyard behind the building, letting sunlight warm my birds chirped overhead, oblivious to my turmoil. For the first time in a week, I inhaled without analyzing every molecule. Returning inside, I made a decision I would delegate. I summoned our operations manager, Dave, and handed him a stack of the most urgent refund memos, $48,000, 0 cents worth of adjustments that had to go out today. "Please handle these," I said. "I need to focus on client calls and legal prep." Dave hesitated, then took the papers. "Got it, Emily." Relief flooded me, an odd mix of guilt and gratitude. I picked up the phone and called the first client on the list, Jennifer Martin. My voice cracked as I apologized, but by the end of the call, Jennifer assured me she believed in my integrity and would stay on board. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. By noon, I'd spoken to 10 clients, several apologetic, a few still angry, one who even offered words of encouragement. "We all make mistakes, Em. What matters is how you bounce back." I sat at my desk, eyes misting, and allowed myself a rare moment of grace. For all the mess I'd inherited, I was still standing. My vision blurred again, not from sleep deprivation this time, but from a spark of something I hadn't felt in days: determination. That night, I left the office exactly at 8:30 p.m. for the first time in a week, knowing that while the collapse had tested me to my core, it hadn't destroyed me. The silence of my apartment welcomed me. I brewed chamomile tea, sank onto the couch, and let my guard down. Tomorrow I would face depositions, deliver recovery plans, and rebuild every bridge that had teetered on the brink of collapse. But In that moment, I allowed myself to just be breathing, pausing, and hopeful that the hard road ahead was one I was finally ready to walk. The next morning dawned on me like a whispered promise. I arrived at the office feeling a shade lighter, as if the weight of grief had shifted into something I could carry. My phone buzzed before I even sat down, a message from Jessica Parker, a client I'd helped 2 years earlier to restructure her small e-commerce business. She'd always been thoughtful, and her text read, "Emily, I don't need a fee, just your advice. Call me when you can." My heart hammered. Jessica never offered favors. When she did, I knew she meant to remind me of the person I'd been before the betrayal. I dialed her number and waited, fingers tapping the desk. When she answered, her voice was warm and steady. "Hey, Em, I just wanted to check in on the news. I'm so sorry you're going through this." "Thanks, Jessica," I said, blinking back tears I hadn't realized I was holding. "I'm managing, just sorting through the damage. Let me help," she said simply. "No charge. I have a little project I could use your expertise on." I hesitated. Offering me unpaid work? That felt like charity I wasn't ready to accept. But I also knew it was a lifeline. "All right," I said. "I'll make time this afternoon." At precisely 2:00 p.m., I joined Jessica on Zoom. Her background was minimalist white walls, a tidy bookshelf, a green plant in the corner. I felt unexpectedly tense, as if I were stepping onto a stage after a fall from grace. "Thanks for doing this," she began, smile in her eyes. "I am launching a wellness subscription box for new moms. I need your help to set pricing, forecast revenue, and outline a go-to-market plan." I pulled up a fresh Excel sheet. My fingers hesitated over the keys. Then I remembered the adrenaline rush I'd once felt helping clients find clarity in their numbers. Slowly, I found the familiar rhythm. Creating columns for unit cost, marketing spend, pricing tiers, drafting an initial model that projected 500 subscribers at $29.99 per month, generating $14,995.00 in revenue the first month. Jessica leaned forward. "This is perfect. Do you think we can hit 1,000 subscriptions in 3 months?" "I believe so," I said, tapping a formula. "If we allocate $2,500.00 a month for targeted Facebook and Instagram ads at an estimated $5.00 cost per acquisition, we'll bring in about 500 more subscribers in that time ring. That means roughly $30,000.00 in monthly recurring revenue by quarter's end." She nodded slowly. "That's exactly what I needed. How much will you charge?" I paused. Before I might have quoted my standard $499.00 mini consulting, but today felt different. I offered, "Let's do $1,200.00 for a 3-month engagement, 2 strategy sessions, and ongoing email support. I want to get back in the saddle and I value this project." "Deal," she smiled. "Sent." I exhaled, the first genuine breath I'd taken all week. As we wrapped up, she said softly, "Emily, I hired you because you're brilliant and because you care. Don't let one betrayal define you." Hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the dark monitor. The person looking back was bruised, but not broken. The spark that had driven me through late-night modeling sessions was flickering alive again. I opened my calendar and blocked out wellness box strategy every Tuesday and Thursday for the next 3 months. By the end of the week, I'd completed the initial deliverables, a pricing spreadsheet, 3-month cash flow forecast, and marketing budget plan. Jessica sent back glowing feedback. "I feel confident about this now. You've got my full testimonial when we launched." The process reminded me why I'd started Turner Advisory, to empower people with numbers, to turn chaos into confidence. I also realized how much I'd missed the human connection. Sarah's betrayal had forced me inward. Immersed in spreadsheets, yes, but isolated. Now, collaborating with Jessica was like stepping back into a community that believed in me. Encouraged, I called Madison. "I've got a new project," I said, voice bright for the first time. I filled her in on Jessica's wellness box and proposed a fresh service line, Turner Advisory Express, a short-form consulting package at $1,200, 0 cents, for 10 hours of dedicated support. "It's a spark," they told her. "Something small that can reignite our pipeline." Madison loved the idea. "Let's pilot it with 5 clients," she said. "We can share the success stories on social media and in our newsletter." Together, we drafted a landing page in less than an hour, bullet points highlighting rapid turnaround, clear deliverables, and fixed pricing. We scheduled email blasts to our 5,000 member list, offering a special recovery edition of the package at $1,100, 0 cents for the first cohort. By Monday, we had 3 signups. By Wednesday, 5. We'd hit $5,500, 0 cents in new revenue before the week was out, proof that a well-timed spark could ignite momentum. Amid this rebuilding, I made another critical decision to invest in my own growth. I enrolled in a business resilience masterclass, 3 one-hour modules each week at a cost of $1,200, 0 cents. I promised myself I'd apply every insight to Turner Advisory. The first session was a revelation. The instructor spoke about psychological capital and the power of reframing setbacks as springboards. I jotted down notes: adversity quotient, post-traumatic growth, adaptive leadership. I translated these concepts into practical steps: daily gratitude journaling, weekly team debriefs, a quarterly resilience check-in, client reviews. By the end of the course, I'd outlined a new internal playbook for toxic risk management policies, for expense approvals, mandatory cross-checks, and a no-secrets protocol. I presented it to Madison and our operations manager Dave over lunch. They both nodded enthusiastically. "This will reshape our culture," Madison said. 2 weeks into this spark-driven reboot, I sat back at my desk and reflected. The shadow of Sarah's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer defined the horizon. I'd turned a client's simple request into an opportunity to re-engage, rebrand, and relaunch. I'd reignited my intrinsic motivation by combining external projects with personal development. And perhaps most importantly, I had a plan I believed in, a plan that married financial acumen with emotional resilience. That night, I stepped onto my balcony once more, the city's pulse echoing below. I raised a glass of chamomile tea, my new evening ritual, and whispered into the breeze, "This spark is just the beginning." As the lights of the skyline flickered on, I felt the ember inside me glow warmer. The path ahead would not be easy, but it would be mine to shape. And for the first time since the day I saw that glaring $5,000, 0 cents on my screen, I felt truly, undeniably. I spent the morning drafting a new service offering. I'd been toying with the Express Advisory package. Instead of our deep dive retainers, I'd strip the process down to a sharp 90-minute strategy session, followed by a concise action plan. Price tag $499, 0 cents. I called it my mini consulting experiment. By mid-reach for Madison, and I launched the landing page. She designed the graphics, bold teal accents, a countdown timer for our special Recovery Edition discount, while I wrote the copy, weaving in our story of resilience, how we'd weathered betrayal, corrected $48,000, 0 cents in client funds, and emerged stronger. We set the offer for the first 20 segments to receive a free section if they referred a friend. I pushed publish. leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. Part of me feared it was too small, too modest after everything we'd been through. But another part, the side that fell in love with problem-solving 5 years ago, tingled with excitement. Within 2 hours, our inbox pinged. The first sign-up was from Claire Reynolds, founder of a boutique event planning firm. In her note, she mentioned she'd heard about our story on that financial podcast Madison had booked us on 2 weeks earlier. The $2,500 0 PR investment we'd made. She wanted help forecasting revenue for her spring wedding season. I smiled. That podcast placement was already paying off. Next came Marcus Lee, an indie game developer seeking guidance on pricing his upcoming mobile app. Then Angela Wu, a yoga studio owner entering new markets. By the end of the day, we had 8 signups totaling $3,992, 0 cents in revenue, and 8 opportunities to rebuild trust in ourselves. The following Monday, I kicked off my first mini consulting session. I met Claire in a bright corner of the office, her laptop open to a spreadsheet already filled with monthly projections. She looked exhausted, understandable, given the chaos of last year's cancellations and postponements. "Tell me your goals," I said, tapping my pen against the notepad where I'd sketched our session outline. Claire exhaled. "I need to hit $60,000, 0 cents, in revenue by June. But I'm not sure how many weddings that means, or what tier packages to offer." We worked through her numbers, breaking down average revenue per client, then reverse engineering how many bookings she'd need. I suggested a 3-tiered package: platinum at $15,000, 0 cents, gold at $10,000, 0 cents, silver at $6,000, 0 cents, each with clearly defined deliverables. Claire's eyes lit up. "I would have never priced it that way on my own," she said. By the end of our 90 minutes, she had a calendar view showing exactly how many clients to target each month. She paid the $499, 0 cents fee on my tablet, her gratitude genuine. "This was worth every penny," she said, smiling. By Wednesday, we'd filled all 20 mini consulting slots. Some sessions took place over Zoom, others in person. We covered everything from cash flow projections to marketing funnels, each client leaving with a clear, customized action plan. The total revenue ticked up to $9,980, 0 cents, nearly $10,000, 0 cents in just 1 week. It wasn't the 6-figure quarterly retainers I'd once dreamed of, but it felt urgent, alive, and frankly, exactly what we needed right now. Our recovery edition had done more than generate income. It reignited our momentum and gave clients a front-row seat to our comeback story. Meanwhile, Sarah's name lingered at the edge of my inbox. I'd instructed Lauren to handle all legal correspondence, but a part of me wondered if Sarah would try to negotiate, to crawl back with excuses. The night before, I'd received a terse email from sarah.brooks@email.com. Subject: Question: Discuss settlement terms. Emily, I would like to discuss an arrangement that doesn't involve the courts. Please let me know when you're available. I deleted it. No more distractions. Any communication had to go through Lauren. A week later, I hosted my first public workshop, 3 Steps to Financial Clarity, at a local co-working space. Madison handled the registrations for $25, 0 cents tickets to cover venue costs, and I crafted a 45-minute presentation on basic budgeting frameworks and forecasting techniques. The room held 20 chairs by start time. 18 were filled. The crowd leaned forward, nodding as I walked them through case studies, my mini consulting clients among them, sharing brief testimonials at the end. Walking off stage, I felt a surge of pride. I'd turned a moment of weakness into an opportunity to serve and reconnect. 20 participants paid $25.00 each. Total workshop revenue was $450.00, but the marketing value was priceless. We recorded the session, turned it into gated content for our email list, and sent it to 5,000 subscribers with the subject line, "Walk Emily's Comeback Workshop." Open rates hit 42%. Click-through hovered at 12%. We added 120 new leads to our pipeline, potential clients who might later upgrade to our Express package, or even full retainers. Each afternoon, I reserved an hour to work on podcast outreach. Madison researched personal finance shows with audiences of 10,000 plus listeners. I drafted pitch emails referencing our mini consulting success and the workshop turnout. Within 10 days, I secured another guest slot, this time on Millennial Money Moves, an influential podcast with 50,000 monthly listeners. The next episode would air in 3 weeks. Through it all, I leaned on Madison. Our daily 4 p.m. check-ins became a sacred ritual. Tea in hand, we'd sit in my office and debrief. We celebrated 5 more signups today, and dissected hiccups that our actual bounce rate is too high. We brainstormed next moves, a referral program, a content series featuring client success stories, even a collaboration with a fintech startup that had reached out after hearing my workshop. The real turning point arrived when I logged into my bank portal one morning to pay the team's salaries and saw our balance, $82,400.00. 2 weeks prior, that number had sat at $45,000.00 after legal fees and client refunds. Nearly doubling our cash position in a fortnight was more than survival. I texted Madison, "Look at this, we did it." Her reply came in seconds. "We did it together." That night, I settled onto my balcony with a notebook and sketch pen, mapping out the next chapter. Roll out a referral champions program. $100.00 credit for any client who refers a mini consulting client. Develop a quarterly resilience report newsletter, sharing insights on financial recovery. Hire a virtual assistant to streamline admin tasks. $20.00/hour, 10 hours/week. As I sketched, the city lights flickered below, each window a story: someone's home office, someone's late-night work session, someone's quiet reflection. I thought of how our own late nights had forged a new path, from betrayal to breakthrough. I closed my notebook, feeling the familiar thrill of possibility. My transformation wasn't about punishing Sarah or erasing the past. It was about crafting something new, leaner, more agile, and infused with the lessons of hardship. The spark of recovery had ignited a steady flame, and as I turned back inside, pen in hand, I knew that whatever came next, I'd face it with the same determination that had carried me from that first $5,000.00 shock to a bustling pipeline, a thriving workshop series, and a bank balance that told a story of resilience. I was ready for the next chapter, one defined not by fear, but by the fierce confidence of someone who had turned the tables and reclaimed her narrative. While I was scrambling to rebuild Turner Advisory, I couldn't help but notice how Madison Lee was quietly fighting her own battle and winning. Madison and I go way back to college, where she financed her degree by working weekends at a cafe and tutoring peers in communications. After graduation, she'd landed a PR role at a boutique agency, but it came with a catch: she needed $20,000.00 in working capital to launch her own freelance business. I still remember the day she knocked on my door clutching a binder of pitch decks. "I'm about to take the leap," she said, determination lighting her eyes. She'd maxed out 2 credit cards and arranged a small personal loan to cover website design, branding, and her first round of client outreach. Watching her navigate vendor contracts, negotiate payment terms, and hustle for media mentions was like witnessing a masterclass in due diligence and in courage. That experience became our secret weapon when Sarah's scandal erupted. While I was drafting refund memos, Madison was running parallel health checks on our PR strategy and client communications. She retraced her own journey, how she'd tracked every dollar spent on press kits, used spreadsheets to forecast media ROI, and built contingency plans in case a big placement fell through. She applied those same principles to Turner Advisory, auditing our marketing budgets line by line and flagging any unexplained expense. One evening, after we'd resolved the bulk of Sarah's mess, Madison and I grabbed tacos at our favorite spot, an unassuming taqueria that served more than 20 varieties of salsa. Over carnita and horchata, she walked me through her process. When I was starting out, I learned to treat every dollar like a client, she said, scooping guacamole. I'd map out my burn rate, then reverse engineer how many press features I needed to break even. If a podcast slot cost $2,500, 0 cents in PR fees, I tracked it against projected lead generation. Did it pull its weight? I nodded, realizing how much of her freelance rigor she'd brought into our partnership. It wasn't just about messaging, it was about accountability. That taco night sparked a new idea, integrating a Madison Method into our service offerings. A mini audit for marketing spend. For $299, 0 cents, we'd analyze a client's past 3 months of ad and PR expenses, identify waste, and recommend reallocation strategies. Within 48 hours, clients received a concise report highlighting how to boost ROI by at least 15%. When we soft-launched the Madison Method, 5 clients signed up in the first week, collectively reallocating over $14,000, 0 cents in marketing budgets based on her insights. One client, a small e-commerce brand, pivoted $3,000, 0 cents, from underperforming display ads and saw a 22% lift in monthly revenue. Madison's side story taught me that due diligence isn't just a checkbox, it's a mindset. Her freelance roots, built on meticulous planning and bold risk-taking, infused our recovery with both structure and creativity. It reminded me that resilience often springs from the lessons learned on a smaller scale, and that sometimes the best insights come from a friend's own hard-fought journey. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and expectant. I sat in the passenger seat of Lauren Carter's black SUV, watching city traffic blur by as she steered us toward the courthouse. My stomach churned, but beneath the knots was a calm resolve. This was the day Sarah Brooks would finally face the consequences of her betrayal. Inside the hushed halls of the downtown courthouse, Lauren guided me through security and up a flight of stairs. We passed portraits of stern-faced judges and lingered outside courtroom 12B. Lauren squeezed my hand. "You ready?" she whispered. I nodded, smoothing the lapel of my blazer. Despite the early hour, 8:15 a.m., the waiting area was already filling with lawyers and their clients. Somewhere beyond the door, Sarah sat at the defense table, flanked by her own attorney. When the bailiff called our case, Lauren and I followed him into the wood-paneled chamber. I felt the familiar tremor of nerves as I glanced at Sarah across the room. Her shoulders were hunched, hair pulled into a tight ponytail, eyes hidden by tortoiseshell frames. She looked small, diminished in image I never imagined when we'd toasted her investment prowess just months ago. Judge Whitman entered, his robes whispering over the polished floor. He nodded at the attorneys and the proceedings began. Lauren presented our evidence methodically: the hidden SB_expenses spreadsheet, the duplicate invoices, email threads in which Sarah had intentionally misled me. Each exhibit triggered a subtle murmur in the courtroom. I watched Sarah's face as she realized there was no escaping the documented proof. She had meticulously routed $20,500.00 of client funds into her own accounts. When it was my turn to testify, I rose and walked to the witness stand. The moment I settled into the chair, I felt every eye upon me. Judge Whitman's gaze was steady. Lauren whispered, "You'll do great." It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated betrayal of every client we served. I described the sleepless nights, the frantic calls to reassure clients, the painstaking reconciliation of every unauthorized charge. I watched Sarah at the defense table. Her chin quivered as she stared at her attorney for guidance. After cross-examination, the gallery cleared, and the judge announced he would issue a written ruling within 2 weeks. Lauren leaned over and whispered, "You are compelling." I managed a small smile, but my thoughts were on our clients. Any victory now belonged to them. 2 days later, in a crisp envelope stamped "official," the ruling arrived. I tore it open at my kitchen table, voice shaking as I read the verdict. Judgment: Sarah Brooks is found liable for embezzlement and breach of fiduciary duty. Sarah Brooks shall pay restitution of $250,000.00 to Turner Advisory within 60 days. Sarah Brooks shall reimburse legal fees totaling $22,350.00. Sarah Brooks is permanently enjoined from holding any position of trust in a financial advisory firm. My hands trembled as I reread the numbers. $250,000.00. The sum was more than the funds she'd taken. It reflected the harm to our reputation and the expense of rebuilding. I closed my eyes and exhaled, relief flooding through me. The court had acknowledged the gravity of her actions. That afternoon, I forwarded the judgment to our clients with a concise note. "Dear valued clients, I am pleased to share that the court has ruled in our favor, awarding full restitution and additional damages for the breach of trust you experienced. We are already receiving the funds and will continue to invest in further strengthening our controls and resources to serve you. Thank you for your patience and loyalty. Warmly, Emily Turner." Responses poured in: gratitude, congratulations, messages of continued partnership. One client wrote, "Watching you stand up to dishonesty has only deepened my respect for Turner Advisory." Meanwhile, Sarah's world unraveled. News of the judgment circulated in legal circles, and by week's end, her LinkedIn profile was scrubbed of any mention of Turner Advisor. Rumors spread that she'd also lost her position as a guest commentator on that fintech webinar series. I received word through Lauren that she was exploring bankruptcy protection, desperate to shield whatever assets remained. Through it all, I held firm to the lessons learned. I used part of the restitution funds to retain the CPA firm for an extended audit, another $12,000.00 investment to ensure no loose ends remained. I upgraded our expense tracking software, added a new compliance officer to our team, and rolled out a quarterly transparency report for clients. Our new protocols, once theoretical, were now battle-tested safeguards for our clients. On a crisp Saturday morning, I drove to the courthouse steps. I tucked a copy of the ruling into my bag and snapped a photo of its header, Judge Whitman's name etched above the case number. Later, I shared it on our company's social feed with a brief caption, "Restitution achieved. Integrity restored." The post garnered unexpected engagement. Colleagues, even some industry influencers, congratulated us and noted Turner Advisory as a case study in ethical leadership. That evening, I sat on my balcony, overlooking the city skyline. The glow from office windows below reminded me of the countless advisors and entrepreneurs watching from small startups to established firms as our story unfolded. I raised my glass of chamomile tea and whispered, "You lost everything, Sarah. But I gained so much more clarity, resilience, and proof that integrity pays dividends." And as the night settled in, I felt a quiet triumph, not in Sarah's downfall, but in Turner Advisory's unwavering commitment to trust, transparency, and the clients we vowed to protect. The morning after the judgment arrived, I woke before dawn, heart beating not with dread, but with purpose. I slipped into my favorite navy blazer and felt its familiar weight settle on my shoulders. The city outside my window was still hushed, but inside me something had shifted. The chaos of betrayal had been transmuted into resolve. It was time to turn this painful chapter into a blueprint for lasting success. I poured a cup of black tea and sat at my kitchen table, the court's ruling spread out before me. 24 hours earlier, Sarah Brooks had been a trusted partner. Now she stood as a cautionary example of how easily one bad actor could threaten everything we'd built. I reviewed the 4 directives the judge had issued: $250,000, 0 cents restitution, $22,350, 0 cents in legal fees, permanent injunction, and let each one sink in. This wasn't just about recouping losses. It was a mandate to rebuild Turner Advisory on a foundation of ironclad integrity. By 8:00 a.m., I was in the office. Madison had arrived early too, armed with 2 venti cold brews, our quiet celebration ritual. She slid one across the table. "We did it," she said softly. I raised my mug and clinked hers. For the first time in months, it tasted like victory rather than survival. Our first order of business was practical reconciling client accounts. Over the past weeks, we'd refunded $48,000, 0 cents, in unauthorized fees, but the court's restitution would cover that and more. I opened our accounting software and began mapping out the deposit schedule. Day 1, $100,000, 0 cents. Day 30, another $150,000, 0 cents. Enough to restore client balances, cover our legal bills, and invest in the systems we'd outlined in our turnaround plan. Next, I drafted an all-staff memo team yesterday. We received the official judgment in our case against Sarah Brooks. The court has ordered full restitution of $250,000, 0 cents plus legal fees. This victory validates our commitment to transparency and client protection, values we will now strengthen across every process. Today, we begin the next phase, implementing our new financial controls, rolling out the client assurance program, and expanding our services with the lessons we've learned. Thank you for your dedication and resilience. Onward, Emily. I hit send, then turned to Madison. Let's kick off the client assurance program today. We'll offer 2 months of free advisory services to every client impacted, not as charity, but as an investment in trust. She nodded. I've drafted the email template and created a trust rebuilt landing page with key FAQs. We spent the next hour customizing the outreach for each client segment: entrepreneurs, executives, families. By midday, the first batch of assurance invitations was in inboxes, and within 2 hours, several clients had already replied with gratitude and renewed retainer agreements. That afternoon, I met with Dave, our operations manager, to finalize the upgrade to our expense tracking platform. We signed the contract for the new system, $1,500, 0 cents setup, $350, 0 cents/month, and scheduled training sessions for next week. No more single-click approvals or hidden tab. Every expense over $500, 0 cents, would require 2 authorized signatories, and automated alerts would flag anything unusual. It felt like armor for our financial processes. Then I spoke with our external CPA firm. They'd uncovered additional discrepancies dating back 18 months, small unauthorized transfers totaling $9,200, 0 cents. While Sarah's judgment covered these amounts, I asked the CPA to extend their audit through the end of 2023. Better now to find and fix any hidden weaknesses than to discover them later. When 5:00 p.m. rolled around, I left the office for the first time that week without a stack of unresolved tasks. I drove to the local park, parked by the lake, and walked the winding path, replaying the lessons the ordeal had taught me. Trust, once broken, must be rebuilt with action. Words of apology mean little unless backed by systems refunds issued, controls tighten, open communication. Transparency is a competitive advantage. Clients rewarded our honesty with deeper loyalty. By openly sharing our recovery plan, we turn vulnerability into credibility. Leadership means owning failure and guiding others forward. I could have hidden Sarah's misdeeds or blamed circumstances, but stepping up restored faith in me and the firm. Resilience is engineered, not accidental. From the Madison Method for marketing audits to our Express advisory package, each new service reflected the grit forged in crisis. I paused by a bench overlooking the water and took notes in my journal. Ideas for a quarterly resilience report, proposals for a client community forum, plans to expand Turner Advisory Express into 2 new states by year's end. These weren't fanciful dreams. They were action items, each with a timeline and budget. Back in the office the next morning, I convened a lessons learned workshop with the team. We spent 90 minutes discussing what went wrong, where our controls had failed, how communication had broken down, and then flipped the conversation to solutions. Madison led a brainstorming session on continuous monitoring dashboards. Dave proposed a monthly trust health check with clients. Our new junior advisor suggested interactive client workshops on fraud prevention, an idea we booked into our calendar for Q4. We closed the meeting by writing 1-sentence commitments on sticky notes, small pledges each of us would uphold. Mine read, "I will personally review every client invoice weekly." Madison's, "I will report any red flags immediately." The walls of the conference room bloomed with these notes, a tangible manifesto of our renewed ethos. 2 weeks later, we held our first Resilience Roundtable webinar for clients and prospects. More than 80 attendees logged in, drawn by a candid title, "How to Recover from Financial Betrayal." Our real-world case study. I shared Turner Advisory's story in 10 minutes. Then Madison and I answered live questions on prevention, controls, and recovery. The chat overflowed with "Thank you for sharing your journey," and "This is exactly what we needed." Within 48 hours, our pipeline grew by 4 new projects, and 2 existing clients upgraded their retainers by 20%. They didn't just trust our expertise, they believed in our character. As summer unfolded, Turner Advisors' quarterly revenue rose 28% year-over-year. Our Express advisory package sold out each month, and the Madison Method audits became a staple offering. We expanded into Florida and Texas, hired 2 more advisors, and invested $12,000, 0 cents, in a client experience platform that allowed secure document sharing and real-time collaboration. On the final day of Q2, I sat on the balcony with a glass of iced tea, reflecting on how far we'd come since that jarring $5,000, 0 cents, bank alert. Betrayal had nearly destroyed us, but it also revealed the missing elements in our business: robust controls, transparent communication, and a fearless ethos of accountability. I raised my glass to the skyline and whispered, "To resilience rebuilt." The city lights twinkled in response, each one a reminder that in the wake of crisis, opportunity awaits those brave enough to learn and grow. And as I finished my drink, I felt prepared no matter what tomorrow might bring to lead Turner Advisory with integrity, wisdom, and the unwavering conviction that true strength lies not in avoiding failure, but in transforming it into triumph.